Yo guys, it's JJ here, and today I'm going to be walking you through a Carson type beat for his newest album that just dropped on Friday, A Great Chaos. Super dope album, fire beats by Filthy and other producers alike. But before we get into the video guys, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We have just passed 1.5k, on the way to 2k, and to show some love I've got a bunch of free drum kits in the description for you. And to get the latest one, go check my Instagram, grab it for free, lots of fire sounds, and I will be using it in this tutorial. So without further ado, let's just start. So, first thing to note, I'm doing this at 150 BPM in a scale of E minor for now, but the first plugin I have got is Analog Lab 5 using a preset called Filter the Motion, which is essentially just a nice little synth. And as you can see, very simple pattern, it's a nice repetitive one, catchy and dark, and that's the whole point of these Carson beats. If we look at this nice little 2-bar that's highlighted, all I actually did initially when I first made this was I actually made it just like this, and I didn't have any of these bottom notes playing. And then as you can see, having these notes 1 semitone apart just creates a lot of tension, that dark vibe you really want for these kind of beats. So I thought to myself, let me just switch it up a bit, brought it down to the C, and took these two down another semitone, which again further reinforces that dark kind of vibe. Then copy and pasted it 3 times over to make a full 8-bar. So this is what the main melody for Carson's beats sound like. For the effects, I will say this now, they are all very simple, but for this melody in particular, we are using an EQ to cut off all the lows. Then we got an instance of Soothe 2 just to act as a compressor to duck those harsher frequencies within the synth. And then next up, a light hint of Valhalla Vintage Verb, just to add a bit of reverb and ambience to the sound. And looking at the stereo separation, I did this around 30%, just to widen it a bit within your headphones, so I really recommend you go through this tutorial with like studio monitors that are like, in stereo or have headphones on. As for the next sound, I got myself a nice lead preset coming from the Mini V plugin, and it's a preset called 5880 Sparta. Fire preset, I do not know how I got this, but really dope. And looking at the lead pattern, it is quite simple. I am following those notes which were from the previous chord progression. So looking at the pattern, I'm essentially just following those notes which are played within the chord progression. So looking at it, we do start off with that B, going into that G, into that F sharp, and then down to the C. And then for the bit of variation, I go from the F sharp back into the G, and then into that B yet again. So all I'm doing is following those notes from that chord progression and playing it differently just to give it a nice sound. And then all I do is copy and paste this pattern 3 more times for the full 8-bar. To further reinforce that, as I said, notes are semitone apart, use the same notes, gives it a nice dark characteristic. And now this is what a lead for Carson sounds like. As for effects, all I did was get an EQ to cut off all the lows. Another bit of Soothe 2 as we could see, just acting as a compressor. Then an instance of RC20 with the Vinyl 1 preset, just to give it a bit of a vintage and distorted sound at the same time. And last but not least, some Valhalla Vintage Verb, just to add a bit of ambience and reverb to the whole sound. And next up, we are onto the bass line, so we're using Analog Lab 5, and the preset is called Gardener at Night V2. Very nice, dark and gritty bass, exactly what you want for these kind of beats. And from the pattern, it is pretty simple, following the root notes again, going from C to B and following it the whole way through for the full 8-bar. As I said, simple, catchy, repetitive. It's just that key formula you want for these Carson beats. And without further ado, this is what the bass line sounds like. And there we have it. Just that bass alone really adds a lot to the whole sample. But now it's time for the final element. And looking at the final element, I got myself an instance of Mini V yet again, using a preset called the Trance Arc. And the pattern is actually just that main chord progression, but I took it up a whole octave just to separate those frequencies and not have too much clashing going on. And for the effects, I got an EQ cutting off all my lows, another instance of Soothe 2 as a compressor, and then some Valhalla Vintage Verb to add some ambience and reverb. And then looking at that stereo separation, we are doing it at 38%, to essentially widen within your headphones yet again, creating a much more spaced out sound. And then the final thing I did to the whole sample was get a sound shifter, pitch it up 4 semitones, taking it from an E minor to a G sharp minor. And now without further ado, this is what the full sample for Great Chaos sounds like. And there we have it, super dope Carson vibe. And now it's time for the drums, which yet again are all my drum sounds from my newest kit. Grab that in the description in my IG. And first thing I actually did was get myself a nice Lex Luger snare, playing it on a simple repetitive pattern that we all know and love. So time for the hi-hats. As for this pattern, it is a very simple one. All I did was get this nice little 2-bar looped over, but to break it down, it's essentially just a normal like little step roll here, as you can see on the basic magnet tool, and then another one, but it just goes back to back, and then another roll again, but it's like 2 of them just going back to back, as you can see here, giving it a nice little vibe. And of course, all I did was just right click and drag and then copy and paste it 3 more times to create the full 8-bar. And without further ado, this is what a hi-hat and a snare sound like. And there we have it, simple, catchy, repetitive, as I've reinforced throughout this whole video. And next up we got ourselves the 808, and I'm using my R808, which is a very heavily distorted 808 from the kit. And all I did actually is, if we go onto the little channel rack, click onto here, and usually you'll come up on this menu tab, but if you click onto the envelope setting, all I did was like pull everything down to 0 apart from my hold on max. So what it does is, whenever I play my 808, the note will stop as soon as the note ends. There's no cut off, no release, nothing. It's just a straight like zip end. And looking at the 808 pattern, I do follow those root notes again, going from E to D sharp, bearing in mind we are in a new scale of G sharp minor. So I play my notes, cut it off on the snare, play it again, then go into these D sharp notes, then cut it off here. Then I repeat the same pattern over, but instead of playing this note, I got this nice little kind of stutter 808 going here. Then play the same pattern again. However, I've got this nice little triple kick at the beginning with this 808, which goes super hard, and then add a nice little roll at the very end over here. But if we look up and above, we've got a nice little gliding note, which if you just click this and you click a note in, it adds a glide. And one thing to know about my 808, and this will apply to my kick as well, is I always max my velocities out, as you can see from down here. And the reason I do this is because it maxes your 808s out, maxes your kicks out, makes them much punchier in the mix, comes through much harder, sounds better for producers and artists alike. And the way I do this is if I click Control A, highlighting all my notes, I grab my mouse, click that scroller wheel down, as you can see, and then push it all the way to the top. All it does is max your velocities and gives you that much punchier 808 in kick that you're looking for. And as for the kick pattern, pretty simple and straightforward, just following where the 808 hits essentially, and that's pretty much it. And now without further ado, it's time to play the full beat for a great chaos. And there we have it, folks. But before I wrap up the video, let me just walk you all through the beat structure. So looking at the beat structure, if we just hide this little section over here and look at it, that is essentially the intro, a full 8-bar. But I introduced this nice little like siren sound, which is from my kit as well. And then looking at the sample, I chop it off at the end of every 4-bar just to give it a nice little kind of, you know, glitchy effect, just to build up to the chorus. As for the chorus, it is 2 8-bars long, making it a total of 16. And all I do is have that main melody playing with all the drums, and then I reintroduce that nice little like lead counter melody. And then looking at our verse section, we got 3 8-bars, making it a total of 24. And looking at the first 8-bar, it's essentially that main sample playing alongside that 808 and those simple drums. But I take away the kick at the beginning just to kind of build up to the second 8-bar. And as soon as that second 8-bar hits, I introduce that new melody which wasn't played before, which is that nice little arp alongside the kick, making it much punchier and much more grand. And then last but not least, for the final 8-bar, which is what I like to call the pre-hook, it's essentially that, you know, 8-bar just before your chorus hits again. So all I did was strip out all the drums, reintroduce that bass line and keep that arp in with the main melody. And then all I did again was copy and paste my whole chorus, copy and paste my verse, and then once again with the chorus being copy and pasted. But I add that arp at the very end of it because, you know, it's the final bit of the chorus, the final thing before the song ends. So want to wrap it up with a grand finale. And folks, there you have it. That's how to make a great chaos type beat, you know, with that Carson aesthetic. But of course, thank you very much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. As I said, on the way to 2K, so all support is appreciated. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.